$5 billion gone in a single year. A company worth more than Goldman Sachs. 300 million users, still losing money. So where does the $157 billion valuation actually come from? And is any of it real? OpenAI's valuation hit $157 billion in a late 2024 funding round, making it worth more than Goldman Sachs, more than Ford and GM combined, more than nearly every bank most Americans have ever heard of. The company is barely 9 years old and has never turned a profit. Valuation and revenue are completely different things, and confusing them is exactly how most people misread this company. Here is the actual money, where it comes from, where it goes, and why the losses are almost the whole point. OpenAI generated roughly $3.7 billion in annualized revenue in 2024, up from $1.6 billion in 2023. That's more than doubling in 12 months, which almost never happens at this scale. But the company spent over $8 billion in the same period, producing an operating loss north of $5 billion. To understand why investors are still writing checks, you have to understand how the money actually moves. Because OpenAI isn't running one business model. It's running 5, stacked on top of each other. ChatGPT subscriptions are the most visible piece. The $20 a month plus tier and the $200 a month pro tier launched in late 2024. As of early 2025, ChatGPT has more than 300 million weekly active users, and a meaningful share are paying subscribers. Industry estimates put the consumer subscription business at well over $1 billion in annual revenue. That makes ChatGPT one of the fastest consumer apps to reach $1 billion in revenue in history. Faster than Netflix, faster than Spotify. But the consumer app is actually the smaller half of the business. The real money is enterprises paying thousands of dollars per month, not individuals paying 20. ChatGPT Enterprise launched in 2023, higher security, private data handling, admin controls, no usage caps. Pricing starts around $30 per user per month and scales sharply from there, with some reported contracts running into 8 figures annually. Klarna, Morgan Stanley, and PwC have all signed on. Klarna alone replaced 700 customer service agents with an OpenAI-powered tool. That is not a software license, that is core infrastructure. But even enterprise subscriptions are not the biggest engine. The API, the application programming interface, is the engine underneath nearly everything. Developers pay to plug OpenAI's models directly into their own apps, websites, and products. Every customer service bot, every AI writing tool, every coding assistant that runs on OpenAI charges back to this one pipe. OpenAI charges by the token, roughly 3/4 of a word. GPT-4 costs about $2.50 per million input tokens and $10 per million output tokens. That sounds tiny until you multiply it across millions of API calls per day. Some estimates put API revenue above $1 billion annually on its own, and it is growing faster than the consumer side because businesses scale usage in ways individuals simply cannot. Then there is a revenue stream most people have never thought about. Microsoft has committed roughly $13 billion in total investment to OpenAI in exchange for favorable access to its models, which power Copilot, Azure AI, and Bing. That deal is structured so Microsoft takes a share of profits until it recoups its investment, meaning right now a significant slice of OpenAI's revenue flows back to Microsoft before OpenAI sees $1 of actual profit. It looks like an investment, but functions more like a high-stakes loan with equity on the back end. Beyond Microsoft, OpenAI has licensing agreements with media companies, research institutions, and federal agencies. Government AI contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars are quietly flowing to AI providers right now. OpenAI is among the recipients, and that revenue line is growing fast. And then there is the fifth revenue stream. Either the most brilliant strategic move in tech or the most expensive gamble OpenAI has ever made. In early 2025, the company announced it was working with Jony Ive, the designer behind the iPhone and iMac, on a consumer AI device. The ambition is an AI-native gadget, not a phone, not a smart speaker, something architecturally new. Hardware is where you capture value permanently. If someone buys an OpenAI device, every interaction runs on OpenAI's models, and every upgrade flows through OpenAI's ecosystem. Apple's hardware gross margins run around 35 to 40%. That is the prize. The fact that a company founded as a nonprofit research lab is now designing consumer gadgets tells you everything about how the strategy has shifted. And the nonprofit structure is where the story gets genuinely strange. This is the piece even business journalists get wrong. OpenAI was founded in 2015 as a nonprofit. Frontier AI research is extraordinarily expensive. So in 2019, it created a capped profit arm. Early investors could earn a return, but only up to 100 times their money. After that, all additional profit would flow back to the nonprofit. A $100 million investment could legally return $10 billion before the cap kicked in. In late 2024, OpenAI began converting to a public benefit corporation, a more conventional structure that would remove or significantly raise that cap. Investors want normal equity, not capped returns with a nonprofit board sitting above them. That restructuring represents hundreds of billions in potentially unlocked value. But it also means the original mission, ensuring AI benefits all of humanity, not just shareholders, is now in direct tension with the financial structure the company needs to survive. That tension is playing out in real time in boardrooms and courtrooms. Training a single frontier AI model costs somewhere between $50 million and $500 million in compute alone, before salaries, energy, or safety research. OpenAI reportedly spent over $700 million on compute in 2023. By 2024, that figure is estimated to have exceeded $3 billion. To make it concrete, NVIDIA's H100 GPUs were selling for roughly $30,000 to $40,000 each during this period. Training one large language model can require tens of thousands of those chips running continuously for weeks. The electricity bill alone on a single training run can reach 8 figures. This is why OpenAI has raised more than $17 billion in total funding since 2019. They are not burning money carelessly. They are in a race where slowing down means falling behind permanently. And the deepest logic of that race is something called the intelligence flywheel. Here is how it works. More users generate more data and feedback. Better feedback makes the models better. Better models attract more paying users and bigger enterprise deals. More revenue funds larger training runs. Larger training runs produce more capable models which attract more users. The cycle compounds. This is why today's $5 billion loss does not panic investors. Because if the flywheel keeps spinning, the loss today is the price of owning the market tomorrow. It is the same logic Amazon ran for nearly a decade while building AWS, the cloud division that now generates more operating profit than all of Amazon's retail operations combined. The risk is that the flywheel stalls. A competitor builds something equally capable at a fraction of the cost. Regulators intervene. The market decides it does not need one dominant AI provider. And in January 2025, something happened that made that risk feel very real, very fast. A Chinese AI lab called DeepSeek released a model that matched GPT-4 level performance, reportedly trained for under $6 million. The announcement triggered a single-day wipeout of roughly $600 billion in market value across AI-related stocks, with NVIDIA alone accounting for nearly all of it. The largest single-day market cap loss for any company in stock market history. What that moment exposed is the central vulnerability in OpenAI's model. If intelligence becomes cheap, if any well-funded lab can train a competitive AI for a few $1 million, then OpenAI's pricing power collapses, and that $157 billion valuation looks very different. OpenAI's response was to double down on what DeepSeek cannot easily replicate: safety research, brand trust, enterprise relationships, and the ecosystem of products built on top of the models. The argument is that the model itself is just one layer. Distribution and switching costs are what create durable value. It is the same argument Microsoft made about Windows and Google made about search. The underlying technology gets commoditized, but distribution and switching costs keep the incumbent in place. Whether AI follows that pattern is genuinely uncertain, but that hardware bet suddenly makes a lot more sense. Lock in the device, lock in the ecosystem, the way Apple locked in the App Store. So here is where it lands. OpenAI is simultaneously one of the most impressive revenue growth stories in tech history and one of the most structurally complex companies ever built. A quasi-nonprofit racing to dominate a market that might commoditize its core product, while managing a restructuring worth hundreds of billions and a hardware launch it has never attempted before. By the end of 2025, the company is targeting $11.6 billion in annual revenue, roughly tripling from 2024, while navigating the restructuring, competitive pressure from DeepSeek, Google, and Anthropic, and active regulatory scrutiny from the EU and the FTC. The most honest thing you can say about OpenAI's business is that nobody, not investors, not analysts, not the company itself, knows exactly what the ceiling looks like, because nothing quite like this has been built before. OpenAI is losing billions to win a race. But what if the race has no finish line?